Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Today we're on with Kate Wass, and we have the privilege of speaking to her today. She is working at a company called Premium Sales Consultancy, and one of the things that we always like to do with our guests is ask them some primary questions. And the first one I have for Kate is, how did you get involved in sales? And more importantly, what led you to be getting into the consultant business?
So I feel like this is probably quite common for a lot of salespeople, but I really just fell into it.
Okay.
So I, coming out of college, was looking for a full-time job, and
Right.
it was actually a contact center, a sales call center that I first started out working for, an inbound contact center. It was working sort of as an outsourced solution for financial services companies.
Okay.
And so they would, when they got a new credit card, debit card, they would call up to activate their card. And whilst we got them on the phone, we would then try and sell them insurance products.
Okay.
And that company where I lived locally was what I would call a rite of passage. So at some point, everybody that I know has worked there.
There you go.
And it was a tough environment. It was my first full-time role. I'd worked previously part-time whilst I was at college in retail sales and things like that. But it was, I guess, my first opportunity in a corporate environment. And I have to be honest, I didn't really enjoy it at all.
Well, that can be
And I think that was
challenging.
more, yeah, it was challenging. And I think that was probably more around some of the cultural elements of the role. It was very heavily sort of a micromanaged environment. You were monitored constantly, your time was monitored. And so I found that quite difficult. But I actually ended up working with them for about 3 years. And whilst I was there, I developed through the company. I worked in a coaching role for them, a sales coaching role, and also as a trainer for them as well, for their new starters, sort of doing their inductions for them. And then after about 3 years, I took a complete, I guess, a U-turn in the fact that I went to work in recruitment.
Okay.
So at the time, I knew a few people that worked in recruitment, and it looked really glamorous. I saw lots of people on nice holidays and with lots of money and designer handbags, and I thought, wow, it seems like a great role, because my wrong understanding was that you were just helping people find jobs, and it was a great job. It would be, giving back and helping people. And what I didn't realise was how much of a hardcore sales role that actually was. I think a lot of recruitment consultancies now operate quite differently, but back then it was what we would call a 360 role. And so, yes, you were doing all of the nice candidate-led meeting people and putting people in new roles, but you were also on that cold calling element as well. But I actually worked in recruitment for 10 years before I joined Premium Sales Consultancy, in a large corporate to start off with. And then sort of over the years developed more of a niche specialism in HR recruitment and change management. And then I ended up sort of finishing my career in recruitment working for a small startup firm. So there was just 3 of us. And that was just a completely different experience, and I really loved it. Unfortunately, COVID happened, lockdown happened. And there was a number of things that went on personally. I moved house and lots of different things. And so I decided that it was more so led by actually the commute into where I was working from where I'd moved to. And Premium Sales Consultancy is actually my sister's business.
Oh, wow.
So it's a family business. My sister owns the business. Her husband works for the business as well. And so at the time when I was looking for a new role, we'd been having conversations around what I wanted to do. And she sort of basically floated the idea. She was like, why don't you come and work for me? We'll try it for 6 months. And if after 6 months either of us decide it's not working, then we can walk away and there'll be no hard feelings.
Right.
And so I decided to give it a go. And here I am 6 years later.
Well, there you
I'm
go.
not
You take
there.
that 6 months and multiplied it quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
so you had 13 years between the previous two jobs when you started
Yeah.
off. You're right. One was inbound,
Yes.
and that was grinding constantly,
Yeah.
trying to make. Then the other one was more outbound. When you do the recruiting part, it's outbound. You're smiling. Basically, you're dialing for dollars, and
Yeah.
that's a phrase used a lot in the U.S. So that's a perfect analogy. You mean you went from in to out, and you learned a lot. I mean, in that time
Yeah.
frame. And did you at the HR and the recruiting company? Did you do training as well and start to develop people and get in coaching, or is that only in the first job?
And that was really only in the first job. So the sort of when I went down the specialist route, I was,
Excuse me.
recruiting for HR and change management professionals. Although training and learning and development roles were roles that I recruited for, and so
Okay.
I really loved that specialism because I inherently am quite nosy, and I really like to understand about businesses and kind of
Right.
what they're going through and the commercial challenges, and so working with HR professionals, that was really interesting because you get to understand, all the changes that they're trying to make and how they're
Right.
trying to influence the culture and the leadership problems and how they get their teams to be top, performing at the level that they want them to. So it was a very different perspective on things, but you get to find out all sorts of interesting things about businesses.
Well, that's the general nature of what you do in sales. I mean, my background was in sales, and I hate to tell you how long I've been doing it. I mean, I started right out of college in 1976 at Xerox Corporation. I think it was Rank Xerox over in London.
Yeah.
And that was my first sales job when I was 22 years old. And then I started my
Yeah.
own company and all types of things. And now I'm just enjoying doing this and having a blast, so it's fun. But selling is basically knowledge gained, what you learn, not knowledge given, what you want to talk about. And so when you start to apply that, so tell me in your business at Premium Sales, how do you guys help your clients? What are their problems and how do you help them solve them?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I think we work with a lot of small to medium sized organisations.
Okay.
And I think one of the key challenges is always around talent. Talent is always a big issue, whether that is hiring the right people, or whether that is actually developing the people that they've already got, and making sure that they've got the right people in the right roles and that they're getting the support and the development that they need. And that's something that I think is a trend where companies really lack, is giving salespeople that training and that support and that development. And another big thing is always sales process, whether that's they don't have one or it's not fit for purpose or people don't follow it. Having a robust sales process, I think, is always a key challenge for people.
It is, and there are so many people who try and put together a company and, hey, I'm glad you came on to work today. Here's your business cards. Here's how you log into your computer. There's the door. Let me know when you get your first transaction, and good luck to you. Versus, hold it, let's make sure there's a good boarding process, there's an educational process.
Yeah.
Then you put them through it, and then you have a sales culture. And if you
Yeah.
have a sales culture, you can manage accountability and all the other components that go into it.
Yeah.
So so for you guys, it sounds like you said small to medium. Define that for me. Is that 20 to 50 employees? That's 100 to 500? Where do you guys go after?
We do a lot in that kind of 20 to 50 employee
Okay.
range. Now, some of those organisations are multi-million pound turnover, but their employee base is very small. And what we also get quite a lot of is businesses that are still owner run.
Okay.
But that business owner is normally what I would call a subject matter expert.
Okay.
So they
on his
are
company,
a
on
specialist.
their company.
Yeah, so they're a specialist in their field, but they've never been in a sales or a commercial role, and so they don't necessarily understand what good looks like from that perspective. All they know is they don't feel their sales team are delivering the financial results that they should be, but they have no idea on how to get them there.
Well, that's interesting because now you've got two things you got to do. One, you have to educate an owner, and in their mind, here's their thought process. Well, here's what I did. Why can't they do it?
Yeah.
Well, you can't clone yourself. You're not able to do that, so you're not going to have replicas of yourself everywhere. So you have to take your team and let us work with them to build them to the point where they're competent, professional, and they get the profitability you want. So when you guys do that, you've got a customer, and they may or may not be resistant to your input, but yet they know they need to do something. What is it you appeal to them on as to why they should work with your group?
I think for us, it's that we've got real life experience. So we have two arms to our business. So we've got the consulting business, but what our business was built on and what it started out as 12 years ago was an outsourced sales solution. So we have a team of 25 people who provide outsourced telemarketing services to clients all over the UK. And so we are still very much hands-on in that business. And so we recruit, train, develop, incentivize, we manage the systems, the processes and the structure of that. And so we've got a tried and tested solution.
That team's going to do things the way you want it to happen. And so it's like a turnkey. You just bring them in and say, here's what we're going to do now. Is it a contract? Is it a period of time? How do you guys set up your customers to utilize that in-house that you're bringing to them?
Yeah, so some of our customers don't like to utilise that, and some of them have got their own sales teams and kind of want us to develop that team. We have got customers where we've done both, and what our sales team is that they do what I would call the donkey work, the cold outreach. So they will hit the phones, they'll do the research, they'll have those conversations, qualify people, understand more about the business and the requirements, and then what they'll do is then pass that opportunity to the salesperson that's within the company to be able to then develop that. Because what we also find is that within the companies that we work with on a consultancy basis, that cold outreach piece is always the piece that the sales team are reluctant to do. They don't like it. Sometimes it's because they're not confident in doing it. Sometimes it's just because they don't want to, or they feel that it's beneath them, and that they shouldn't have to do that. And so they can utilise that service if they want to, and kind of we can, I guess, instill some best practice, and we look at processes and how to do that. But we've also got clients that don't want to utilise that and want their own team to be delivering that, and so we can, I guess, from our perspective, sales is a process. And there are processes and systems and things that you need to do in order to be successful, and we can replicate that model internally with a business if we need to as well.
Well, you think about what you guys are doing. You've got multiple ways you can service your client. You've got the one where you can provide the support, or you educate their people to the process that you believe is right and correct, and then you're going to utilize that, and you have a proven track record with it. So with your ability to get customers, how do you market yourself currently? Is it through social media? Is it through business platforms like LinkedIn? Referrals? What's the primary go-to for you guys to get new clients interested to work with you?
So for a very long time, we didn't do any outreach ourselves. All of our work came to us through referrals and recommendations and word of mouth. We took a conscious decision probably around 5 years ago to start developing the business ourselves, and I guess diversifying, because our client base we did a lot within specific industries, and that's how we got so much business through word of mouth. But we wanted to make a very conscious effort, really post-COVID, where we saw industries effectively fall over and so many businesses go under. We didn't ever want to be in a position where we were solely reliant on one industry sector.
One channel, right.
Yeah, and so we made a conscious effort to diversify, and we did that ourselves through cold outreach, though I guess putting into practice the methods that we use for our own clients in terms of that telemarketing outreach, the email outreach, Over the last sort of 12 months, we had quite a conscious focus around developing more of a presence on social media and through LinkedIn. Because we'd never had to before, and we don't paint ourselves as experts in that. You know, there are fantastic digital marketers and social agencies that really know their stuff in that. But we've sort of made a real effort over the last 12 months to just, I guess, get our profile out there more, and to be a little bit more present and share some of our knowledge with people through those networks.
Have you thought before or ever entertained podcasting and what it can do to get your message out there efficiently and effectively as a method for your marketing? Have you ever looked at that?
So it's actually something that we've literally just started brainstorming. So I've done a little bit of podcasting and a bit of blogging in my last recruitment role where we were working for that startup business. Nobody knew who we were.
The three of you?
Yeah, so nobody knew who we were because, you know, the industry is saturated and we were a very small fish in a big pond. And so, you know, because we were sort of targeting a very specific, I guess, potential customer group, we started, blogging was always a big thing for us. We did a lot of blog writing. We also held our own events and networking. And then podcasting was something that we started doing as well. So I used to do a series which was called Insider's Story, which would, I would interview senior HR professionals in big organisations. So, for example, the HR director for Doc Martens, the Boots brand. And learn
very
more
popular,
about them.
Very popular shoe over here.
Yes, same here. So yeah, I went down to Camden and met her at the office, and we kind of I interviewed her and really just understand more about people's journeys and the journey that the company is on as well. But obviously after I left that industry, it was something that kind of, I guess, fell by the wayside. And now because we're having more a marketing focus and looking at how we can, I guess, develop the brand and have more outreach online, sort of podcasting was one of the things that I'd actually suggested. So it's something that's very much in its infancy, but certainly something that we're going to be looking at.
Okay, good. Think about your clients right now. You guys work hard. What's your selling cycle from you get a lead to somebody, you have a contact, they agree to meet with you, whether they've been a referral or whatever methodology you got acquired them. Now you're sitting down with them. What's the selling cycle from inception to when you think they start to implement you guys working with their company?
It really varies from client to client. So, and that's normally quite telling as well in terms of the type of client then that we're going to be dealing with. So some of our clients, you know, we will have an initial conversation with them over the phone. We'll then go and meet them the following week, and they will sign up to the consultancy service pretty much there and then, so it can be very quick. We've got other clients where that conversation can be ongoing back and forth for 2-3 months. Before they sign up. We've had situations before sometimes where it's been, 12, 18 months, almost 2 years from when we've initially spoken to them through to the point where they've actually started utilising us.
Well, at least you had the persistency to follow up, which is critical in sales. Otherwise, you're going to fail anyway. What about retention? So I get a client, they come on board. Is there, again, back to I think I posed the question to you, is there a contract? So they're going to use you guys for X number of months or a year, and then it renews automatically. How does that work?
Yeah, so on our consultancy business, we always contract, and it's normally a certain amount because it's more of a retained service. It might be a certain amount of days per month, and we'd normally do an initial term of 3 or 6 months, depending on the size of the project. On our outsourced telemarketing business, we always contract our customers in initially for a 3-month fixed period, and then after that point, it would move into a rolling monthly contract.
Okay. So on retention, so I have a client, they've used me. What would cause them not to use this? Is it completion of the contract? You've trained the people, but then if they bring in new employees in the course of a 6-month to a 1-year period, do they bring you back in because you've done a good job? How do you retain your clients and grow your market with what's really already in your backyard, your own clients?
So that, again, that can really vary. So we have clients where there is a very specific project or piece of work, which might be, a 6-month project. And so they'll commit to that. And then at the end, once we've completed all of the deliverables, that will come to a close. We've then had them that have come back again in 3 or 6 months' time about something else. But I think the key for us, and something that you mentioned, is that follow-up process. With all of our clients, we keep in consistent communication with them. And that's not always to talk business. We build relationships with these people.
Sure.
We've got some clients that we've worked with since the business started 12 years ago and have worked with us continuously. And I think the key thing for us is not forgetting about those people, keeping in regular contact with them, and making sure that, they still feel valued and that we've still got an interest in their business and how things are developing. But also on some of those, we've then developed, I guess, more personal relationships with them over the years.
Right.
And so, we've got some clients, where we meet up with them just for coffee, and just to kind of have a bit of a catch up. But I think one thing that's really important is that we're always after honest feedback. And I think, to retain clients long term, and particularly, if you've got, we've got clients, as I said, that have been with us for 12 years, it's not just about, hi, how's it going? You need to have those open and obvious conversations, those regular reviews. I think people are very good at touching base with current clients. But do they ever really delve into, are they still happy with things? Is there anything we could be doing better? Have they got any feedback for us? Have they got other people that do a similar thing to us that are trying to poach them and get in touch with them and offer them services?
Exactly.
And I think that's something, I think people sometimes get a little bit complacent, particularly if they've been, with a customer for a long time. They just assume that because they're still with them, that they're happy and that, they're going to stay with them forever, and then they can get caught off guard if something changes. So for me, it's very much about having that open communication with people and making sure that you are having proper structured catch-ups with them. So 6 monthly, 12 monthly reviews with them to make sure that they are still happy with the service that they're receiving, and making sure,
You're spot on. I'm going to give you a quick tip, and you guys can use this one. Remember one thing within an existing customer. If it's a company of 20 to 50 employees, find one person in there. It doesn't have to be the decision maker. It could be the decision maker, but somebody who's an influencer, and plant them as what the British would call a mole, a spy.
Yeah.
They're your eyes and ears when you're not there. And you should touch base with them once a month or once every other month. Cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever. Hey, how's it going? Tell me what's really going on. What are you seeing? Is there somebody trying to get in here? What's the feedback? Give me what people say about us. It's invaluable. It really is. If you want to retain clients, having one of those people as your inside eyes and ears when you're not there always is the best way to maintain and protect your clients. So just food for thought if you start to think about that. Something you can maybe try at one company and see how it works.
I agree.
So thinking about, you guys want to drive your growth. What are you looking in terms of growth in 2026 and heading into next year? What are your visions or your plan?
So for us, it's very much about growing the consulting side of the business. Our outsourced sales solution almost runs itself. We consistently win new business. We retain a lot of our clients on a long-term basis.
Right.
And so for us, it's very much focusing around the consulting arm of the business, because that's really, I guess, mine and my sister's, what I would say is our passion project. That's the stuff that we really get satisfaction from. And so for us, it's about widening our networks, getting the brand and the business known across wider platforms, and I guess getting out to market, trying to develop some relationships with some larger organisations, where there are going to be bigger, longer term opportunities rather than the short term projects. We also run, we're a CPD accredited training academy. So alongside the consulting work that we do, we also run sales training courses, where companies can send their teams to us, and we deliver sort of 1-day sessions. And so for us, we're keen to, I guess, grow that further. We're also developing an e-learning platform, so those courses can now all be I guess viewed online and bought and done online. And so for us, it's about developing that side of the business for sure.
Well, you're looking at a lot of diversification, which is critical.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to do that if you're going to survive. And
we never sit still.
You can't. I mean, if you do, that's going to cause you to be pass up, and before you know it, it's hard to catch up. So when you look at the business itself in general, competition that you run into, what differentiates or delineates who you are versus someone else trying to sell to a client who has similar related services? What's the difference?
I think the difference for us, and I always think it comes down to this, is ultimately the people that work in the business. I think because we are, I guess, a smaller outfit to some of the larger corporate consulting businesses, what we can do can be very bespoke, very tailored. And what we really want to understand from the business is commercially what is going to work for them. So, sales process and sales development and sales skills, it's not a copy and paste. And so, we can't have a blueprint that we just come in and deliver into every business. What we really like to do is get under the skin of the business, spend time with the senior leadership team, spend time with that sales team and really understand what their mindset is, what the cultural challenges are, what they feel the barriers are, and try and come up with a solution that ultimately is going to work for them as a business, rather than just something that we know works that was worked somewhere else.
Right. You can't just take a shelf product and say this is going to work
Exactly.
at A, B, C, and it's also X, Y, Z. You can't do that. So in your sales system, I'm just curious because this is my background. What process, or you would say process, what do you guys utilize? Is it like a needs satisfaction selling, needs analysis? Have you heard of SPIN, SPIN, sales communication? It was actually created by a guy in London. Neil Rackham was the guy. Yeah. Which one do you kind of use? Then you customize it, it sounds like, to the individual client, but you have a core foundation, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think we very much focus around the needs analysis. So I always believe, from a sales process standpoint, your potential customer should always be doing most of the talking. So we want to ask them questions and find out as much about them as we can, but ask questions that also get them thinking about, really, a proper self-assessment from their perspective as well. Because I think sometimes you can speak to a client and they're like, yeah, everything's great, we don't need this, we don't need that. And I think, there are certain questions that you can throw out where you start to question more around their strategy and their vision and who does what and how is it delivered, and what's the feedback. And you start to, I guess, prod at areas where perhaps we generally find people are lacking, and it starts to gain some of that realization. So we do, I guess, what we would almost call like an audit process with them. Okay. So, we look at everything from start to finish in terms of the strategy, the process, the leadership, the team, the vision in terms of where they want to get to. And a big piece that we always look at is around the communication from between functions, and how are those messages being given and how are they being received. Because we always find that's quite a big fall down as well, particularly with sales leadership. I think in a lot of the organizations that we work with, you tend to find that the sales leadership has become the sales leadership either through time served, or because they were the best salesperson at some point. Right. And as I'm sure you know, the best salesperson generally doesn't make the best sales manager.
No.
And so, messaging and communication can always be a real big challenge. And often, if you can get that right, that solves a lot of problems. So we like to probe around quite specific areas to understand more about the business and get that person thinking.
Smart.
And then we would... Yeah, and then we would start to kind of put together what, I guess, our assessment of things, and almost put together a bit of a proposal for them in terms of our opinions and where we feel they need that support.
Okay. Well, the thing that's interesting is because what you're doing is you're trying to look at for them, here's what we know we can do, but we need to make sure you're aware of what you need. And then critically, what role you're going to play in the execution and implementation of it. Because training without management after the training is an event. Training with management support is a culture. And so what you're trying to establish is a culture and not an event. And so I like that. I like what you guys are trying to do. And it's the only way it's going to grow to the point where it should be. Well, man, our time just went by just like that. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have as well. We got a lot more I want to talk about. But in general, one thing I would like you to do, Kate, is let everybody know, how can they reach you and your company, and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So you can reach us through our website, which is premium-sales.com, or you can reach out to me directly on my email address, which is just kate@premium-sales.com. We're very active on LinkedIn. So we've got a company page, which is Premium Sales Consultancy Limited, which you'll find online. So if you ever want to chat about anything, we're always happy just to be a sounding board for people as well.
Wonderful.
So if people want to reach out, want some advice, want some guidance, then hit us up.
Well, that's it. I love it. I've enjoyed the conversation, Kate, and I think people now have an idea of how to reach you, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.